The message came on a Tuesday morning when most people were drinking their coffee and getting ready for work. Every screen on Earth lit up at the same time. Every radio played the same voice. Down at humanity with cold golden eyes. The creature speaking was tall and thin, with green scales covering its face and neck. Its voice was calm and steady, like someone reading a shopping list. But the words it spoke would change everything. For every human being alive. People of the third planet from your sun, the alien said, I am Ambassador Thane of the Hegemony. Your time of expansion is over. You have crossed into our space without permission. You built colonies where you should not be. You have ignored our attempts to contact you for 2 years. President Elena Vasquez stood in the emergency meeting room in Geneva, watching the broadcast with leaders from every country on Earth. The room was dead silent. No one moved. No one even seemed to breathe. The Galactic Council has made a decision, Thane continued. You will move to the planets we choose for you. You will live where we tell you to live. You will do as we say. This is not a request. Is an order. The alien's face showed no anger, no hatred, nothing at all. It was like watching someone talk about the weather. It made it even more frightening. You have 72 of your hours to agree, Thane said. If you refuse, we will destroy every human being in this star system. We have done this 47 times before. You would be number 48, the message ended. The screens went back to normal. But nothing would ever be normal again. General Marcus Webb was the first person to speak. He was a big man with gray hair and scars on his hands from old battles. How many ships do they have? Director Lisa Park pulled up images on the big screen. The pictures showed dark shapes at the edge of the solar system, near Pluto. There were so many ships they looked like a cloud of metal and death. We count about 2,000 ships, she said. We have 300 ships total. Most of ours are not even real warships. They are cargo ships and mining ships with guns stuck on them. President Vasquez felt sick to her stomach. Earth had spent 50 years building a space fleet after the first colonies were established on Mars and the Moon. They thought they were ready for anything. She knew how wrong they had been. What kind of weapons do they have? Asked Prime Minister Chen from China. From what we can see, they use energy weapons and some kind of shields around their ships, Park answered. Their technology is maybe 200 years ahead of ours, maybe more. The room filled with worried voices. Some leaders talked about surrender. Others talked about evacuation. A few talked about fighting, but their voices were weak and uncertain. Dr. Robert Hayes sat quietly in the corner, reading data on his tablet. He was old and thin, with white hair and thick glasses. He had been Earth's top expert on space warfare. For 30 years, when President Vasquez noticed him, she held up her hand for silence. Dr. Hayes, she said, what do you think? Hayes looked up from his tablet. His eyes were sharp and intelligent. There is something strange about this, he said. What do you mean? If they really have 2,000 ships and we only have 300, why did they give us 3 days to think about it? Hayes stood up and walked to the front of the room. When you have overwhelming force, you don't negotiate. You just attack. General Webb frowned. Are you saying they might be weaker than they look? No, they are definitely stronger than us, Hayes said. But they are being careful, very careful. In my experience, when someone is that careful, it means they have been hurt before. Hurt how? By species that fought back? By people who made the cost of victory too high? Hayes pointed at the pictures of the alien fleet. They have conquered 47 other species. But I bet some of those fights were harder than others. I bet some of those victories cost them more than they wanted to pay. Felt something stirring in her chest. Not hope exactly, but something close to it. What are you suggesting? I am suggesting that maybe they are not as confident as they want us to think. Maybe they have learned to be afraid of desperate enemies. Maybe they prefer surrender to a bloody fight. The room fell quiet again. Outside the building, people were going about their normal lives. They were walking their dogs and going to work and picking up their children from school. They had an idea that their entire species was about to make the most important decision in human history. Even if you are right, said General Webb, what can we do? They still have us outnumbered 6-1. Hayes smiled, but it was not a happy smile. We can make them regret coming here. We can show them that humans do not go quietly into the night. We can make victory so expensive that they decide it is not worth the price. You are talking about a war we cannot win, President Vasquez said. No, Hayes replied. I am talking about a war we cannot lose. There is a difference. Debate went on for hours. Some leaders wanted to surrender and hope for the best. Others wanted to try to negotiate better terms. But slowly, as the day wore on, more and more voices began talking about resistance. By evening, when they took the vote, the decision was unanimous. Humanity would not surrender. Humanity would not be relocated like cattle, the aliens wanted. Earth and her colonies, they would have to take them by force. President Vasquez looked around the room at the faces of the other leaders. She saw fear there, but she also saw determination. These people understood that they were probably about to die, but they also understood that some things were worth dying for. Dr. Hayes, she said, you will work with General Webb to plan our defense. We may not be able to win this war, but we are going to make them remember it. Outside, the sun was setting. Over Earth, in a few hours, they would send their answer to the aliens. It would not be the answer the hegemony expected, but it would be the answer that humanity had always given when faced with impossible odds. They would fight. The human response reached the alien fleet exactly 3 minutes before the deadline expired. General Webb stood in front of the camera in the broadcast center, wearing his military uniform with all his medals. His face was calm and his voice was steady when he spoke to the aliens who wanted to destroy his species. To the Galactic Council and the hegemony fleet, he said, looking directly into the camera, humanity rejects your demands. We will not be moved from our homes. We will not become your slaves. We will not surrender our freedom. If you want our worlds, you will have to come and take them. The message was broadcast to every alien ship in the solar system, and the waiting began. Admiral Crix sat in his command chair aboard the flagship Sovereign, watching the human transmission for the third time. In his 400 years of military service, he had received similar messages from dozens of species. They all said the same things about courage and freedom before they died screaming under his weapons. Typical response from primitives said, Commander Vorn, his second-in-command, should we begin the attack? Crix studied the display showing the pathetic human fleet scattered around their system. 300 ships against his 2,000. It would be a massacre, just like all the others. Not yet, he said. Let them make the first move. The young officers need to see how quickly their courage disappears when real fighting begins. He was still watching the tactical display when the first human ship exploded. The used Defiance had been floating in the asteroid belt for 3 days, pretending to mine rocks like it had done for years before the war started. Captain Torres and his crew of 38 people had volunteered for what everyone knew was a suicide mission. When the lead alien ships came within range, Torres gave the order that would shock the entire galaxy. Set off the charges, he said. Quietly, the Defiance vanished in a ball of fire and light. But the explosion was not random. Torres and his crew had spent 3 days placing nuclear charges throughout the asteroid they were mining. When the ship died, it took the entire rock with it, sending millions of pieces of burning stone and metal directly into the path of the alien fleet. The aliens had shields that could stop energy weapons, but they were not ready for chunks of rock moving at incredible speed. L3 alien destroyers were torn apart like paper. Dozens of others were damaged. On the Sovereign, Alarm sounds filled the bridge for the first time in decades. Report Admiral Crix shouted. 3 ships destroyed. Sir, the humans. They blew up their own ship to kill ours. Crix stared at the tactical display. Suicide attacks were not unknown in war, but this was different. The humans had calculated exactly where the debris would go. They had planned this for days. Interesting, he said. Begin evasive maneuvers and keep formation. The second attack came from orbit around Mars. The UES Retribution was humanity's biggest warship, though it was still tiny compared to the alien vessels. For days it had been broadcasting its position openly, acting like a target that wanted to be found. When the alien cruisers moved to attack it, they learned why Commander Rachel Stone stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the alien ships get closer on her screen. Around her, the bridge crew worked quietly, making final preparations. For their last mission, they all knew they would not see another sunrise. Distance to target, she asked. Begin the countdown. Retribution's nuclear reactor had been changed over the past 3 days. All the safety systems had been removed. All the controls that kept it from exploding had been turned off. When the alien ships came close enough, Stone gave her final command. For Earth, she said, and pressed the button. The explosion that followed could be seen from the surface of Mars. The Retribution became a small sun for 17 seconds. Its light and heat destroying 8 alien ships and badly damaging 12 others in the command center deep under the ground in Geneva. Vasquez watched the battle displays with mixed feelings. Each human ship that died was taking several alien ships with it, but the math was still against them. They were running out of ships faster than the enemy. Status report, she said. General Webb looked at his screens. We have destroyed or damaged 43 enemy ships. We have lost 7 of our own. At this rate, we will hurt them badly, but we cannot win by trading ships. That is not the goal, Dr. Hayes reminded them from his position at the analysis station. We are not trying to win. We are trying to make them think twice about the cost. As if he had called it into being, a new message arrived from the alien. Fleet Admiral Crix appeared on their screen, but something had changed in his expression. The bored confidence was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like respect. Humans of Earth, he began. Your resistance has been noted. You have fought with honor. However, you have only delayed your defeat. We offer you one final chance to surrender with dignity. Your warriors have proven themselves worthy of better treatment. President Vasquez stepped in front of the camera. Admiral, you seem to misunderstand our situation. We're not surrendering, we're just getting started. The transmission ended. In the quiet that followed, Hayes allowed himself a small smile. Phase 1 complete, he said. They are no longer treating us like animals to be put down. General Webb raised an eyebrow. Phase 1. Making them take us seriously. Now comes the hard part. Now we make them afraid. Over the next week, the human attacks continued, each one different from the last. The cargo ship Prosperity had been filled with railguns and attacked the rear of the alien fleet. The mining vessel Endeavour scattered improvised bombs throughout the space lanes. The exploration ship Horizon used false signals to make one ship look like 12, confusing the alien sensors. Every attack cost human lives, but every attack also cost the aliens more ships than they expected to lose. More importantly, every attack showed the aliens that humans would not fight the way other species had fought. There would be no great fleet battles where superior numbers would guarantee victory. Instead, there would be endless small attacks, each one unpredictable, each one costly. Admiral Crix sat in his private quarters, reading the daily casualty reports. In 1 week, he had lost 96 ships to an enemy that should have been destroyed in hours. His crews were beginning to whisper among themselves, wondering why this conquest was taking so long. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Crix was beginning to understand what humans meant when they said they were just getting started. And for the first time in 400 years, he was beginning to feel something he had almost forgotten how to feel: fear. The attack on the alien supply ships came from nowhere. The human vessels appeared from behind Jupiter's largest moon like ghosts, painted black to hide in the darkness of space. Their engines were running cold, and their weapons were silent until the very last moment. Admiral Crix watched 15 cargo ships, and their guards simply vanished from his screens in less than 5 minutes. "How many ships did we lose?" he asked, though he dreaded the answer. Commander Vorn checked his reports twice before answering. 17 vessels, sir, including the supply ship Abundance. Now that ship was carrying food and medicine for 3 months. And the humans? We destroyed 4 of their ships, but the rest escaped before we could respond. Sir, they are using tactics we have never seen before. Admiral Crix had conquered 47 different species across the galaxy. Some had been brave, some had been clever, but none had fought like this. Explain these tactics. They do not engage in direct combat. They hide in asteroid fields and behind moons. They strike without warning and retreat before we can fight back. They use the planets and moons as shields. It's dishonorable. Dishonorable. That was the word that bothered Crix the most. In all his years of conquest, enemies had either fought bravely in open battle or died quickly when overwhelmed. But humans seemed to be writing new rules for warfare. Rules that made his superior numbers and technology less important. The next attack proved his fears were justified. The human ship Discovery had been sending distress signals for 6 hours, claiming its engines were broken and it was drifting toward Saturn. When the hegemony cruiser Vengeance moved to investigate what looked like an easy target, they found a trap waiting for them. Captain Neil Brooks sat on the bridge of the Discovery, watching the alien ship approach on his main screen. Around him, his crew of 22 volunteers made final checks on their equipment. They had all known when they volunteered that this mission had only one possible ending. Target is approaching, his weapons officer reported. Estimated time. To optimal range, 40 seconds. Brooks nodded. The Discovery looked like a damaged ship, but it was actually packed with every nuclear weapon Earth could spare, ranged around an antimatter bomb that had been taken from a research station. The explosion would be big enough to crack a small moon. Send the message to all human ships, he ordered. The transmission went out on all frequencies. This is how humans say goodbye. The Discovery's explosion lit up the entire Saturn system. The Vengeance was completely destroyed, and 3 other alien ships were badly damaged. But more than the physical destruction, the blast sent a message that spread through the alien fleet like a disease. Humans would turn their own ships into weapons rather than surrender. In deep space, other human ships were already moving too, their next targets. The cargo ship Prosperity approached the back of the alien fleet, its cargo holds filled with railguns that could fire metal slugs at incredible speed. The mining ship Endeavor was spreading improvised mines throughout the shipping lanes, bombs that would explode when alien ships came too close. The exploration ship Horizon was using its survey equipment to broadcast false signals, which making alien sensors think they were seeing 12 ships where there was only 1. Every human attack was different. Every human attack was unexpected. Every human attack cost the aliens more than they thought they would have to pay. Admiral Crix read the weekly reports in his private chambers, trying to make sense of numbers that should not exist. Human resistance was not weakening as it should. Instead, it was getting stronger and more creative with each passing day. Sir Commander Vorn entered with the daily briefing, his expression grim. We have lost 96 vessels in the past week. The humans have lost 43. Those numbers are impossible. Yes, sir. And there is more. Morale among our crews is falling. They are beginning to question why this operation is taking so long. Some are asking why we do not simply leave and find easier targets. Crix set down the reports and stared out the window at the stars. For centuries of military service, he had never faced an enemy that became more dangerous as it became more desperate. Most species, when faced with certain death, either gave up or died fighting conventional battles they could not win. Humans seem to be inventing new ways to fight every day. What do our strategic computers predict? Complete victory is still certain, sir. However, the projected casualties have increased dramatically. Current estimates suggest we will lose approximately 300 ships before the humans are eliminated. 300 ships. Nearly 15% of his entire fleet? Politics, such losses would be seen as a complete failure of leadership. The Hegemony Council would demand explanations. His career would be over. Sir, there is one more thing. Vorn continued with obvious reluctance. "We have intercepted human communications. They are asking for volunteers for something called Operation Starfire." "What is Operation Starfire?" "We do not know, sir. The communications are heavily encrypted, but every remaining human ship has volunteered for whatever it is." Admiral Crix felt something cold settle in his stomach. An enemy that planned operations with names like Starfire that convinced every remaining warrior to volunteer for unknown missions, that seemed to grow more determined with each defeat. Such an enemy was beyond his experience. He had conquered species that were braver than humans. He had fought enemies with better technology than humans. He had defeated civilizations with more ships and more resources than humans. But he had never faced an enemy that refused to follow the accepted rules of warfare. In every previous conquest, there had come a moment when the enemy realized they could not win and either surrendered or made a final desperate attack. But humans seemed to view certain defeat not as the end of the war, but as the beginning of a new kind of warfare. For the first time in his long career, Admiral Crix activated his emergency communication system and sent a message directly to the Hegemony Council. He was requesting additional reinforcements, not because he could not win, but because the price of winning was becoming higher than anyone had anticipated. As he finished the message, Crix looked out at the human ships scattered throughout the solar system. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing certain destruction. But somehow, they had managed to turn their own desperate situation into his problem. He was beginning to understand why the Hegemony had been able to conquer 47 species, but had never faced anything quite like humanity. Some enemies fought to win, others fought to survive. But humans, it seemed, fought to make victory too expensive to achieve. Operation Starfire began at 3 in the morning, Earth time. Every remaining human ship in the solar system moved at the same moment, heading toward targets that had been planned for weeks. The operation was insane, desperate, and completely impossible. It was also the most human thing anyone had ever attempted. Captain Maria Santos piloted the converted freighter Liberty through the darkness between Mars and Jupiter, her ships. Cargo hold packed with enough antimatter to destroy a small city. Behind her, 11 other ships followed in tight formation, each one carrying the same deadly cargo. Their target was the main alien fleet, currently holding position near Mars. "All ships, this is Liberty," she broadcast on the secure channel that Dr. Hayes had designed to be unbreakable. "Remember, we need to get within 2,000 kilometers for maximum effect. Their shields cannot stop us if we are inside there. Defensive perimeter." 11 voices answered her, each one calm and steady, despite what they all knew was coming. Each crew had volunteered for this mission knowing they would never go home. But if they succeeded, they would destroy nearly half the alien fleet in one coordinated attack. Admiral Crix watched the human ships approach with growing alarm. Their formation was too tight, their course too direct. After weeks of hit-and-run attacks, why were they suddenly fighting like a conventional fleet? "Sir," Commander Vorn reported, "we are detecting unusual energy readings from the human vessels. Their reactor outputs are far above normal levels. Are they charging weapons?" "Sir, it appears to be containment failure." The words hit Admiral Crix like a physical blow. "All ships, emergency evasive maneuvers. Do not allow the human vessels to approach." But it was too late. The Liberty and her sister ships had already broken through the alien formation's outer edge. The alien ships were too big and too slow to change course quickly. Captain Santos looked around her bridge one last time, at these brave people who had chosen to die with her for the chance to strike a decisive blow against an enemy that threatened everything they loved. "For humanity," she said simply, and activated the detonation sequence. The coordinated explosion of 12 antimatter-loaded ships created a new sun in the void near Mars. The light was so bright it could be seen from Earth's surface. When the fire faded, 73 alien ships had been completely destroyed. With another 41 so badly damaged they would never fight again, the physical destruction was massive. But the psychological impact was even greater. Throughout the alien fleet, crews who had thought themselves part of an unstoppable armada suddenly faced the reality that humans would literally become weapons to achieve victory in the command center beneath Geneva. President Vasquez watched the tactical display with emotions too complex to name. The operation had been a stunning success, but the cost was devastating. 12 ships and their crews, nearly 400 people, had died in less than a minute. "Status report," she requested, her voice barely above a whisper. General Webb consulted his displays with shaking hands. "Enemy casualties are approximately 115 vessels destroyed or severely damaged. We have reduced their effective combat strength by nearly 20%, and our losses since the war began? 37 ships total. We have less than 200 vessels remaining, most of them lightly armed." Dr. Hayes looked up from his analysis station, his aged face showing both triumph and sorrow. "But we have achieved something more important than tactical victory. Have fundamentally changed this conflict." "How so?" "Look at their formation. They are maintaining maximum separation, staying well outside optimal weapons range. And they have stopped advancing toward Earth. For the first time since this war began, they are afraid of us." As if summoned by his words, a new transmission arrived from the alien fleet. Admiral Crix appeared on screen, but his entire demeanor had changed. The casual arrogance was gone, replaced by wary respect and something that might have been fear.
"Humans
"Of Earth," he began, his voice lacking its earlier confidence. "Your resistance has been ... remarkable. The Hegemony Council has authorized me to offer revised terms. We will establish a neutral zone around your solar system. You may keep your current colonies in exchange for a formal peace treaty." President Vasquez studied the alien commander's face. This was the first time he had offered anything except total surrender. The change in his tone, his posture, everything about him, suggested that Operation Starfire had accomplished more than just destroying ships. "Admiral," she replied, "your offer is noted. However, our terms remain the same as they have always been. Leave our space, or we will continue to make your presence here extremely costly." "You cannot win this war," Crix stated, but his voice lacked conviction. "Even with your unconventional tactics, you lack the resources for a prolonged conflict." "Perhaps," Vasquez acknowledged with a slight smile. "But the question is not whether we can win. The question is whether you can afford to keep fighting us."
"How many more ships are you willing to lose?
How many more crews are you willing to sacrifice?
How will you explain to your council that it took your entire fleet to eliminate a single primitive species?" The alien admiral's eyes narrowed, and for a moment his composed mask slipped. Behind it, Vasquez could see frustration, anger, and something else: doubt. "You are asking me to retreat from an inferior enemy," he said. "No," Vasquez replied. "I am asking you to consider the true cost of victory. You came here expecting to face 300 ships in conventional battle. Instead, you have discovered that every human ship, every human life, every piece of human technology can become a weapon against you. We have shown you that we will turn our own bodies into bullets if necessary. The question you must ask yourself is, how many more Operation Starfires are we prepared to launch?" The transmission ended, leaving the human leadership in tense silence. They had played their strongest card and inflicted massive damage, but the game was far from over. They still had fewer than 200 ships against more than 1,500 alien vessels. "What happens now?" General Webb asked. Hayes removed his glasses and cleaned them slowly, a gesture that had become familiar over the weeks of war. "Now we discover whether we have made victory too expensive for them to pursue. We have shown them that conquering humanity will cost them hundreds of ships and thousands of lives. The question is whether their political system can accept such losses for what they see as a minor territorial expansion." Outside the command center, the surviving ships of Earth's fleet took up new defensive positions, ready to make their final stand if negotiations failed. But for the first time since the war began, some of them dared to hope that their sacrifice, and the sacrifice of the 400 souls who had died in Operation Starfire, might actually lead to something other than extinction. The next move belonged to the aliens. Humanity had shown them the price of conquest. Now they would learn whether that price was too high to pay. The message that ended the war did not come from Admiral Crix. It came directly from the Hegemony Council itself. It's transmitted on all frequencies with the full authority of the galactic government. President Vasquez received the transmission at dawn, just as the sun was rising over the ruins of what had once been a peaceful world. The alien on the screen was different from any they had seen before. It looked like a giant spider made of living crystal, with multiple eyes that seemed to glow with their own light. When it spoke, its voice carried the weight of 3,000 years of absolute power. Species of the third planet, the being, began, I am Council Prime Nexer. Your conflict with our forces has been thoroughly reviewed. Vasquez quickly gathered her remaining staff. General Webb, Dr. Hayes, and the other surviving leaders crowded around the display, hardly daring to breathe as the alien continued. In 3 millennia of galactic governance, we have encountered many forms of resistance. Some species chose martyrdom. Others attempted negotiation. A few tried to flee beyond our reach. But you have chosen a path we have never seen before. Creature's multiple eyes seemed to focus directly on the camera, as if it could see through the transmission to the humans watching on the other side. You have made warfare itself too expensive to conduct. Your tactics have cost us 237 vessels and crews numbering in the tens of thousands. More significantly, you have demonstrated that the cost of conquering a determined species may exceed the value of conquest itself. Dr. Hayes leaned forward, his heart pounding. This was the moment everything had been building toward. 3,000 years of galactic conquest, and humanity had found a way to break the pattern. The Hegemony Council has voted to offer humanity a unique arrangement, the alien continued. Will be granted full autonomy within your current sphere of influence. Your expansion will be limited to uninhabited systems within 50 light-years of your sun. In exchange, you will provide military consultation services to the Hegemony. President Vasquez felt the room's atmosphere change. It was not victory in the traditional sense, but it was survival with dignity. More than that, it was recognition as equals rather than subjects. You will teach us your methods of asymmetric warfare, your ability to convert civilian resources into military assets, your willingness to sacrifice individual units for strategic advantage. These concepts will prove valuable in future conflicts with other species. The transmission paused, and when it resumed, there was something in the alien's tone that had not been there before. Something that might have been respect. You have earned what no species has achieved in 3,000 years, the right to remain free through strength of arms alone. The Hegemony fleet will withdraw from your system within 10 standard days. We welcome you to the galactic community, humans of Earth. The recording ended, leaving the room in complete silence. After weeks of desperate fighting, of watching their ships die in brilliant explosions, of facing the total extinction of their species, humanity had achieved what everyone had thought was impossible. They had forced the greatest empire in galactic history to back down. General Webb was the first to speak, his voice filled with disbelief. They are actually leaving? More than that, Dr. Hayes replied, studying the detailed terms that had been transmitted along with the message. They are offering us a formal alliance. Military consultation, technology exchange, territorial recognition. Everything we could have hoped for, and more. President Vasquez felt the weight of leadership settling on her shoulders in a new way. The immediate crisis was over, but now came the harder task of building a future worthy of those who had died to secure it. Out. What are our final casualty numbers? She asked quietly. Webb consulted his records one last time. 41 ships lost. With all hands. Nearly 1,500 people gave their lives for this moment. And the enemy? 237 vessels destroyed or damaged beyond repair. T estimated alien casualties in the tens of thousands. The mathematics were staggering. Had been outnumbered 6-1, outgunned by centuries of technological advancement. Facing an enemy that had never known defeat. By every measure that mattered, it should have been wiped out within hours of the first shot being fired. Instead, they had forced the masters of the galaxy to negotiate. How did we do it? Vasquez asked, though she thought she already knew. The answer, Dr. Hayes smiled, the expression carrying both pride and deep sadness. We did what humans have always done when faced with impossible odds. We adapted. We improvised. We refused to accept their rules for how wars should be fought. And we made them understand that some things are worth any price, General Webb added quietly. Freedom, independence, the right to choose our own path among the stars. Outside the command center, news of the peace agreement was spreading across Earth and throughout the solar system. Humanity had not only survived first contact with alien civilization, they had earned a place at the galactic table through courage, creativity, and an absolute refusal to surrender in the months that followed. Historians would analyze every battle and debate every decision. Military academies throughout the galaxy would study the tactics that had made victory possible. Diplomats would negotiate the treaties that would govern humanity's expansion into the larger universe. But in that moment, in the quiet of the underground command center, the leaders of Earth simply sat in grateful silence. They had been asked to choose between slavery and extinction, and had instead chosen a third option that no one thought existed. The alien ships began leaving the solar system that same day, their massive forms disappearing into the darkness between stars. As they departed, they left behind a changed galaxy. Word of humanity's resistance spread to other species, other worlds that had accepted hegemony rule without question. For the first time in 3,000 years, someone had proven that the Empire could be challenged. Earth's children would inherit a universe full of possibilities. They would explore new worlds, meet new species, and face new challenges. They would do so as free people, not as subjects of an alien empire. The age of human expansion had begun, not through superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but through the simple refusal to accept defeat. Throughout the galaxy, other species would learn the lesson that the hegemony had discovered at such great cost. Never underestimate a species fighting for its survival. Never assume that superior force guarantees victory. And never declare war on humanity unless you are prepared for them to answer with fire, determination, and the kind of desperate creativity that turns defeat into victory. The galaxy had declared war on humanity. Humanity had answered with fire. And when the smoke cleared, it was the galaxy that had learned to fear the flames.